Hey, rock stars. I am here with actually a really good friend of mine and a partner. I have invested in my friend Aaron Zucker's, was it your first investment?
It was.
Your first investment. I typically don't invest outside of South Florida, as many of you know. All my shopping centers, all 6 of them, are within 10 minutes of my house. But Aaron, I've been watching him since he's, I think, about 26, 24?
Like 23.
23, I met Aaron.
I'm laughing because of how ignorant I was at the time that you met me, but keep going.
And really been impressed with his, I don't know, how he's propelled himself through work ethic and networking in the industry, in our industry. So let me introduce you to you, Aaron Zucker from Zucker Investment Group. I'm accentuating the Zucker because I've been calling him Zucker since I've known him. And you're now what, 30? You're
31.
31.
I'm getting old.
So I've known you for 9 years and I've been pronouncing your name wrong. So that's not really good networking.
No, but the good news is I don't care, and everybody else does it anyway. So it's like one of those things where we were just talking about this before we went on. I really don't care what people call me as long as they
don't call you late for dinner.
Exactly.
Well, like people say Azor all the time.
Do they really?
Azor, yeah, instead of Azor.
I
don't care either.
I really would not think that your name would be screw-upable.
People say Azor all the time, and when I'm on podcasts, it's so funny that right before we go on the podcast interviewer will say, "Now, how do you pronounce your name?" And I'll say Azor, and then they'll introduce me Azor. It's like,
well, why would you ask then? I don't understand. What's the point of asking?
I don't know. I think they get nervous in the interview and then they just don't pay attention.
Right.
But
they have a lot of other things going on in their mind, interviewing a mogul like yourself.
So exactly. A mogul. So we are here at the ICSC OAC in Nashville.
Which is totally fitting given what we're talking about.
Exactly. And my podcast, the Retail Leasing Playbook podcast, is taking my latest book, the Retail Leasing Playbook, yep, and dividing it into chapters by chapters and just offering a summary of the chapters for people that might not like to read, because I'm not going to do an audio version of this book. You know why?
Because nobody listened.
Nobody listened to the first one.
Which is a little bit disappointing, but at the same time, hopefully that is a testament to the people finding your information, A, to be important to have, to read physically, and B, to be able to go back and reference, which going back and referencing an audio book is
impossible.
Pretty much impossible to do. Whereas
right,
in theory, your book, which was extremely well written the first time as well as the second one, if you haven't had the chance, I'd highly recommend reading both of them, especially if you're just getting going in the leasing business in our industry. Your book, more so than others in general, requires, or in theory, should involve taking notes and saying, hey, this is applicable to my business, which you can't do it in an unaudible
right
version. So.
Yeah, we had so much demand to go audio on the first book, which is Don't Say No for the Prospect. So, customer demand, they said, please do audio. I did it. It takes 3 days.
Oh.
It's hundreds and thousands of dollars. Hundreds. Maybe not crazy. Thousands, but hundreds. And then to have Josie, my director of operations, tell me about a month ago, by the way, you know how many audios you've sold? And I'm like, no, I sold 400 copies of the first book in a year. I've already sold 500 copies in the last 2 months of the second book.
Wow.
So that's pretty impressive, right?
I would agree.
And I said, well, how many? Like 100, 200, 600? 7. I canceled the audio studio appointment for book 2.
I don't blame you, and that's disappointing to hear. But again, my hope is that people are reverting back to the physical copy. And again, like your book is your book is not like I'm going to read this and become motivated, which.
Oh, bless you.
I have to sneeze and it's not coming out, which is hilarious for a podcast. But anyway, so. Your book is inspirational, but that's a byproduct. The book is really, hey, you read this and you apply it to what you do. Mm-hmm. So I'm hopeful that...
That's why people didn't buy the audio.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't. But I also have never listened to an audiobook. I've maybe listened to like 1 or 2, and it certainly hasn't been since I rededicated or I guess let's call it initially dedicated to really reading. So I'm a big reader, as you know, and I need the physical copy of the book.
So I've just finished Living with a Seal that I've been promoting all over social. I went through withdrawals after I listened to the audio.
Okay.
And I was going through so much withdrawals after finishing that book that then I launched right into Living with the Monks, and I finished that. So now I'm going through Jesse Itzler withdrawals because I really enjoyed listening to both of those books.
That's a sign of a good book, when you miss reading it,
I miss the voice. And I've been in the gym more than ever because if you are listening and you are a workout person or especially a runner, read Living with the Seal and follow him on Instagram. He is the most inspirational person. I just love him. But anyway, let's get to the point because we've got a session to go to.
We do.
Right? Okay.
We do.
So as I said, the purpose of this podcast audience is to go chapter by chapter. Sometimes if the chapters are short, and I'll do 3 chapters. This chapter is a pretty meaty chapter. It's chapter 19, and the title is Fish Where the Fish Are Biting, in parentheses, at industry events. And I've invited people who I know, and even those of you that I don't know, if you read a chapter and you feel that it hits home in any way and would like to come on the podcast and share your opinions, my tips and ideas, how those tips and ideas have worked for you in the past, love to have you on the podcast. And that's what Aaron's going to do today. He's going to talk about some of the tips that I have in chapter 19 about networking at industry conferences. So you read the 3 or 4 chapters of this, 3 or 4 pages of this chapter. Share maybe some stories about your experiences at our conference. Our main conference is ICSE.
Sure.
But we go to others too, Retail Live, some other conferences. We've been to Agent 2021, which is Gary Vaynerchuk's social media conference. So can you just tell our audience about some of the ideas that you read about in the chapter, but probably we talked about years ago?
Sure. So the biggest thing I would start with, and this is going to be really riveting information, and I apologize for
I'm
not
holding onto my chair.
Yeah, exactly. You need to go. So that you need to be there, and I really think that's more than half the battle. So I'm fortunate enough to where, and it was really as a result of being when I was with Peb, when it's carried over into when I started Zig, is I've been able to do deals all over the country. And what that's yielded for me is relationships all over the country, especially in the Midwest, the Southeast, the Mid-Atlantic, all the way down to Texas. I'm doing everything I can to expand my network as far west as I can go. This sneeze is going to come at some point. Sorry. And if the biggest battle that people have is by being there.
Bless you.
Finally came out. All right, good. Now we can actually
ready.
get on. And so, I have friends that are brokers in Atlanta, for example, and I've been talking to them a lot. They're great leasing brokers, and they've really done very well in the Atlanta, Alabama, Mississippi markets. And I give them a lot of credit because they reached out to me and said, hey, you go to a lot of these things. Is it worthwhile? And they're biting the bullet and doing something that makes them feel uncomfortable and coming to the Charlotte ICSC. And they're considering going down to Retail Live in Orlando. And so they're going outside of their comfort zone where they know people and going out to these conferences that they haven't been to and that they don't know very many people. And they're taking the few people that they do know and leveraging them and saying, hey, who can you introduce me to? Because a warm introduction in this business is everything, right?
Absolutely.
And I would tell you that warm introduction can come via just being there and being at conferences. I think the likelihood, so for example, last night I was with a friend of mine, Kevin Cush over at PMAD, who I know you know, and he owns open air shopping centers throughout the country, but with a strong concentration in the Midwest. And Wade Laufenberg, who's the VP of real estate over at Bells and Bricks Outlet, was walking by and was like, hey, do you know Wade? And he's like, no, actually I don't. And they're doing a deal right now. And Wade and Kevin had the opportunity to meet, and I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to connect those two, because who knows what that'll lead for me at some point. I don't know what the result is. I don't need the immediate gratification, which is something worth heading on as well for purposes of this discussion. And I don't know if Kevin called me and said, hey, can you give me an introduction to Wade? And I'm willing to do it. Not everybody is, for A. And B, if I did give Kevin that introduction to Wade, it's going to come over email. And Wade is a busy retailer. I know I'm looking at your no email blast pin. Wade's got a lot going on in his life. To be able to just pull Wade aside in person and say, hey, meet my friend Kevin.
Right.
Invaluable. I don't know how you put...
And you're not, let me just interject, so you're not looking for a payday on this.
No, of course not.
A check.
No, of course not.
Because that's short-term thinking.
Correct.
You're looking for the long-term karma return, maybe in some other area, not even with them.
So, exactly.
Right?
So like my friend in Atlanta that I was just citing a few minutes ago, Matt Rodenstrike with Colliers, he's a phenomenal tenant rep broker in Atlanta who happens to be a fraternity brother of mine, great friend. And he's the one who's branching out, and I am so willing and able to help him because he's going outside of his comfort zone. And I'm also willing to do that because he's performed on an introduction that I've made in the past. So like he represents Planet Fitness in that market, a franchisee who's got 32 stores, who was a friend of mine that I met through somebody else at a trade show. As I think about that and say it out loud. So like ding, 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 if this isn't hammering the point home, I don't know what is. Yeah. And Matt has since picked up that business a little bit because of my introduction, but more because of his great work. Like you have to execute. I mean, that's if you don't execute, it doesn't matter who you know.
So how many conferences have you been to, let's say, in the last 12 months? It's so this recording is the end of February. So when did you go out on your own?
December of 2018.
Okay, so for the first year of ZIG,
yeah.
How many conferences did you attend? Do you know?
Probably 8.
And how did you do more or less when you were with PEB? Or Phillips Edison or DLC?
Less. I actually did less.
You did less.
I did a bunch with PEB because our portfolio commanded that. I was in a unique position with PEB because the portfolio was nationwide, but the leasing team was 2 of us.
Right.
So, or 3 of us, excuse me. And so that put me in a unique position to where I was going to a lot of the regional ICSCs.
Now, but PEB was paying for you to do that.
Yep.
Now you're ZIG.
Yep.
And you're paying.
Correct. Yeah. Zig's paying for it, but I'm ZIG. So
right.
Yes.
You're ZIG. And so for those people listening, if maybe they work for a firm that doesn't send them, maybe, they have to pay for it on their own. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they can't go to 20, but they should pick and choose and go to some. Sure. Even if their company doesn't pay for them, because aren't they the CEO of their future?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, you're teeing up that question in a way that there's no other way to respond. But to Beth's point, yes, you have to be there. And I will tell you, like Scott Bitney out of St. Louis, you'll find him at the ICSC Texas show in Atlanta. And
Shop Talk.
Yeah, Shop Talk in Las Vegas, which I know you ran into him there last year.
He told me to go. He said, you got to go. And I went.
Right.
And it was amazing.
Sure. And so now you'll always resonate. You'll always have a certain emotional attachment to Scott because Scott turned you on to something that you wouldn't otherwise have done.
Exactly.
And now Scott's forever embedded into your mind. And look, I don't know how to quantify it. I don't know how many new deals you're going to get done because of that. I don't know how much money you're going to make because of that. But
attention is the new currency.
Exactly.
And if people don't know you, they can't flow you, as Grant Cardone says.
Exactly. And so I've noticed it, like, again, reverting back to my friends at Colliers in Atlanta who are considering going to different shows, Heather Hargraves and Matt Rodenstrike there and Lane and some other people. They're like, hey, like, should I go there? And I can tell you other people in their market that have gone across the country and attended these shows. And I'm like, it's resonated with me as a developer investor. Like, hey, like I saw the people from the SRS office and the Atlanta office at the Chicago ICSC, at the Charlotte ICSC. Right. And the fact that I noticed that they were there, again, no idea how those people make direct. If you're looking for an immediate ROI in the conference, like you shouldn't go. And even if the conference is 10 minutes from your house.
But so to that point, there are people that go to shows and don't do any planning and walk around with people they know and then leave the show and wonder why it wasn't as productive.
That's a schmuck move.
Okay, so let's talk about now. So now I think we've convinced the audience, get off your butt and go to a show.
Sure.
Now, what do you do before the show?
Sure.
During the show and after the show? Let's talk about some of the tips in the chapter.
So you need to go through the list.
What list?
So ICSC's prime example. They had the attendee list right on the website. So to say it's not accessible is absurd. Go through the list, and 90% of the shows you can go through the list pretty quickly. And with an intimidating show like Vegas, which is overwhelming for somebody like you and I, because it's not like we have 15 counterparts across the country going through the list. You can actually filter it on ICSC's website by company.
Right, that's what I do.
Yeah, you got to do that for Vegas. I mean,
I do it for this show. For OAC, I did it by company because I'll know, like, okay, Bell's Outlet or Bed Bath & Beyond, there's 5 guys. Okay, I want to speak to Seth while I'm there.
Sure.
Or Phillips Edison. Okay, there's 15 guys. Well, I want to talk to Ron Myers. Like, it's way better to filter it by company.
But even this show, well, you say that, and that might be a strategy. I would argue the contrarian too. Like, I went through it by individual for this one. There's only 600 people going, and it's 7 pages on ICSC. It takes, if you time block 15 minutes to a half hour, you can just write down who you want to hit, and it's very straightforward to execute on. So
go through the list, and then what do you do why do you do that?
Well, I mean, very obvious and straightforward, right? Who do I want to meet with? Who do I want to be in touch of?
And do you reach out to them in advance for meetings?
Sure. And this show is actually a great example, and I had to hear no a lot because let me rephrase. I had to not get calls back a lot. But the people at this show they're a big deal. I mean, let's call it like it is. You got the CEO of XYZ REIT, publicly traded on the stock exchange. You have the, chief development officer, not just the real estate manager of XYZ retailer. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get a call back from everybody. And what I would tell everybody who's listening to this is don't get discouraged by that. There's 600 people attending this show. There's 40,000 people who attend Vegas. You can't meet all of them. No matter.
And all you need is 1 or 2 good meetings, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that justifies it.
Like people I only got 7 meetings for Vegas. I'm like, you just need 1 good one.
Right.
But last year at this show, I reached out to Mike Mackinnon from Site Centers on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And I got an email back. A LinkedIn message back from Mike. We met at this show last year, and within 4 months, I was speaking to his company in Atlanta in front of 60 people. Reached out to him on LinkedIn before this show and met with him at this show. I didn't know him. Right.
But the message that needs to be conveyed from this conversation, because I'm thinking, if I'm a pessimist right now, or I'm thinking about the people that are skeptical about the message that we're sharing, is, well, Beth, you're well known and you're a speaker. That concept applies to anything that goes with this show.
Right. I didn't know him, and I don't think he knew me.
Right.
So, there are people I don't know. And there are people, look, I spoke at the New York CSC, and I asked the audience, there were 300 people in the room. How many don't know who I am? 80% of the room raised their hand.
That's humbling.
And yeah, but it's great because for me, I see that as opportunity, okay? Because I'm the glass half full, right?
Correct.
And then I spoke at Retail Live in Phoenix 2 weeks ago. There were 300 people. How many people don't know who I am? 90%.
Sure.
But they knew me after the talk.
Right, of course they did. And again, like, you having the platform to speak is a huge part of that.
But you know how individuals can have that platform?
Anybody.
Do you know how? At conferences?
What do you mean?
How can you get a platform at a conference without speaking? You did it yesterday.
Leading a round table.
What else?
I'm missing the
asking a question.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
So this morning on LinkedIn, Adam Lipkin wrote a whole post on this, and about going to a conference, standing up, introducing yourself, and asking a smart question, right?
Right.
Not commenting and trying to use it as a pulpit, but and you need to have an intelligent question. I pretty much try to do that with if not every panel. Most panels. And I'm in the red jacket, and I'm always in the front of the room.
Right.
And it gets to the point where they start to know, oh, Beth, you have a question,
Sure.
which is awesome.
Sure.
But, ask a question.
Ask a question
and introduce
advice.
Yourself.
That's great advice.
And you did that yesterday.
Did I?
Yeah, you stood up. I'm pretty sure you said, I'm Aaron Zucker,
Yep.
Zig Investment, and you asked a question to one of the panelists, and I was like, good job.
Oh, yeah, I did actually. I asked one, well, I'm actually getting confused because I asked multiple questions, and I think that's easy for people like you and I because we're natural extroverts, and I think there's introverts out there that are listening, and so.
Well, so let's talk to those people. So one of my tips for the introverts is when you go to a conference, walk up to a person who's standing alone.
Love that tip. I've used it multiple times in my career.
Because you save them.
Yes.
The guy standing alone is feeling awkward, he's feeling uncomfortable, and you save him. I did that at a Vegas ICSC. I was at a foundation event. I didn't really know that many people. I was kind of bored. I go up to a guy standing alone. We start talking. He didn't have his name tag on. Like 15 minutes in, I said, "Oh, by the way, I'm Beth, and I'm from South Florida. Who are you?" And he was the CEO of Great Clips.
Yeah.
It's like, yes.
That's a good one.
It was a good one.
I've done a deal that way.
Yeah.
So I leased a 21,000 square foot vacancy that way.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
I was at the ICSC conference in Chicago at a cocktail party, and I just saw someone. The name tag looked quasi familiar. I went up to them. They were having a drink. They just ordered a drink and were standing alone. And I went up and said hello, and we got Planet Fitness to relocate from down the street from a shopping center, in a center that was really troubled in Davenport, Iowa, because I just went up and said hello. Peb executed on the deal after I left, but I basically teed it up for them on my way out the door.
There you go.
Just by saying hello to someone that was standing on their own.
Exactly. So look at the registration in advance, reach out to people. I think reaching out on LinkedIn is way better than email.
Yeah, I've found that too. In hindsight, I probably should have done that a little bit better than I did with this going into this conference.
But now you can for Vegas, right?
Sure.
And then how about saving some time, without appointments? What do you think about that?
Look, I mean, and for people who are looking to break into the industry, you might struggle to fill in your schedule as it is anyway.
Right.
So what better way to turn that negative connotation with, oh, no, I don't have that many appointments, into a positive?
Right.
You never know who you're going to meet. I know investment sales brokers, good buddy of mine out in LA who moves a ton of real estate. And he does not book, he books very few appointments. He gets a ton of value out of shooting the breeze, saying hello to people he does know, and getting introductions. And he's like, yeah, it's inherently become my strategy, and it's worked for him.
Right. And I also say, if you're new,
I'm not recommending that, by the way.
Right. No,
if you're new in the business, that's not what I
try to get some appointments. But I think that also going to the educational offerings that the conferences have, like a lot of times I get frustrated, and in the past when I've had teams where I've been in listening to, like yesterday, the Blackstone Economist, which is fascinating. I'm learning something all the time. I'm sitting next to and around people I don't know that I'm introducing myself to, or they're introducing themselves to me, and then I come out and I see maybe one of my team members hanging with 3 of my other team members, and they're out in the hallway talking to people they know.
I can see the smoke coming out of your ears.
Absolutely.
Don't do that, people.
So don't hang with people That's not why you spent the money. That's not why your company spent the money to send you.
Or the time, for that matter.
Right. And that's when going to a conference is not productive.
Correct.
And if you are an introvert, then just go to the sessions. And again, just introduce yourself to the person next to you. Or just, even if you're too shy to do that, which in our industry, I don't know why you're in the industry if you are.
Correct.
But go and learn, and then maybe comment to the person next to you, oh, that was interesting.
Yeah. There's great opportunities to meet people, like in the buffet line, at during lunch, or whatever it may be. Like, all those people are, anybody who's isolated, it's a great opportunity to meet them, and you never know who you're going to meet. And frankly, I agree with you to your point. If you're not great with someone one-on-one, and you're not great in a more public type setting, you're probably in the wrong business.
You might be. What do you think about dinners? When you're new, the newbies don't really get invited to dinners, right?
Sure.
The vets are with the Bell's Outlet guys, right?
So I don't love dinners. In fact, I was excluded from so many dinners that I still don't go to them. And I get invited to them, and to me, I don't think it's a great return on my time at conferences to spend 3 hours sitting next to the same person and talk. There's only so much I can talk to you about.
Right.
And so, now, that being said, not going to a big, long dinner doesn't mean you should be spending time in the hotel room. That's ridiculous.
Right.
You should be bouncing around to as many cocktail parties as you can. You should be introducing yourselves, and a lot of impromptu good meetings happen by being everywhere. and figuring out where those networking parties are. And I'm going to give everybody a secret that's going to make some marketing people out there, especially for the brokerage shops, pretty upset. But I got news for you. The parties that you don't get invited to, they're not really that exclusive. Like,
right.
If you have a little bit of, you can show up and go.
Yeah. Well, so I agree that sometimes the 3-hour dinners are not productive, but sometimes they are. And if everyone's going to dinner, and I do worry that newbie is what they are going to do is go in their room.
That is unacceptable.
So I want them to pair up with someone and either party hop and pair up, hang out in the lobbies, right?
Yeah.
Don't overdrink, but maybe create your own dinner. Like there's a lot of rookies out there. We have a very good friend, Natalie Champion Battisti.
Yeah.
And early on in her career, she reached out to me. She goes, "What are you doing for dinner Monday night at the Orlando ICSC?" I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I've got a dinner." She goes, "Everyone has dinners." I didn't get invited to any dinners. I'm too new.
Right.
And the next thing you know, I said, I didn't give her any advice. I said, "I'm sorry," right? About a week later, she calls and she goes, "Ha, I solved my problem with the dinner." I go, "What?" She goes, "I created my own dinner. I have 40 people going to dinner that that didn't have plans to go to dinner.
Now they have plans."
So she coordinated the uncoordinated.
I love it.
And everyone knew who she was because she coordinated the dinner and she saved those people from being in their rooms that night.
And I'm laughing because
that is her,
Natalie,
right?
Yeah,
exactly.
That's Natalie's. Yeah, she creates her own sandbox if she doesn't like the one that's being offered to her. So there's other ways. There's so many ways to get creative. I would say the other advice that I would give that doesn't necessarily fit for everybody, but I think it's one of those things where short-term pain for long-term gain really applies, is you can sleep when you're dead. Like, say yes to everything. Say yes to going to the conference in general, which is the biggest part of it, and that's more than half the battle. But if and when you do show up, go to oversubscribe to cocktail parties. Just figure it out, bounce around. Oversubscribe, go to 2 dinners. Go to the late night parties. Stay out until if there's a retailer or a broker or somebody that you're trying to schmooze and wants to spend time with, and they want to, they're interested in going to, the old Las Vegas, like local part of town in Vegas, or they want to, hit Disney World in Orlando if you're at the Florida show or whatever it may be. You can sleep later. Like, go out until 1 a.m. if you need to, and get up at 7:30 a.m. for coffee for that meeting. Go really hard for that 2 or 3 days and rest when you get back home.
Right. Well, and I think resting in advance, if you want to party, stay after and party after. Like, I've known friends and young people that have gone to Vegas early to party and then they're wiped for the show. For us, Florida and Vegas are huge shows, right? Or maybe not Florida for you anymore, but I always tell people, sleep up, hydrate, get ready. This is our Super Bowl, and then party afterwards, right?
Right.
I believe in, a coffee in the morning, meetings, a lunch, maybe 2 lunches, an afternoon coffee, meetings in between, dinners, cocktail parties. Yeah, absolutely. It's go time.
It's go time. You got to maximize your time there. And if you resonate with people and the person that you get the vibe that the person that you're schmoozing wants to go out for drinks, I would tell you to do it. Do it within moderation.
Right.
Do it strategically.
Be careful. Don't wear the lampshade. I, unfortunately, in 34 years, have worn the lampshade 1 or 2 times.
Yeah.
And I will live to regret it. So don't do that.
No, you don't want to do that. But, and look, and maybe you create the illusion that you're out partying and you order a water that looks like vodka and you put a lemon and a lime in it and it looks like a drink, but really you're just hydrating and getting ready for the next day. There's certain tricks that are out there that you can do that will create the illusion that you're out there and everywhere
being
all the
cool,
time.
right?
Yeah.
So let's wrap up because we're running out of time. I like to keep this short and sweet for the audience. The conference, you're now at the airport, getting ready to get on a plane to go home.
Yep.
So you're done, right?
No.
Okay.
You're not done. I ran into a broker from Charlotte on the way here who was flying to San Diego. He was 3 gates down from me. And then I ran into 2 more investment sales brokers on the plane. And then I ran into a leasing broker as soon as I got off the plane. And that's just for this conference with only 600 people. And there's, it's not like it's a Charlotte-driven conference. It's a national conference. So
how do you keep it going on the way home? or when you get home?
As far as follow-up?
Yeah.
Oh, you have to write handwritten notes. You have to email. I think I like the plain, and I get it. You're tired. All you've been doing is talking to people and schmoozing and working and busting your butt for the last however many days it's been. But the one thing I like about the plain is you can't get a phone call, and so you're able to do administrative work and I like doing the handwritten notes on the plane because there's no interruptions associated with it, and you don't have to talk during handwritten notes. You can be in silence, and your hand may cramp a little bit after banging out 10 or 15 or however many handwritten notes on a 2-hour flight, whatever it may be. But you've knocked them out, because I know when you get back, you have a gazillion emails to catch up to. There's so much follow-up to do via phone calls and getting back to the nuances of your day-to-day job. So you're doing it quickly. You're doing it at a time that's uninterrupted. And you're doing it at a time where you're actually capable of doing it, which,
And your memory's still there versus getting interrupted. What did we talk about at that meeting? And my last year in Vegas, I sat next to two guys. One was sleeping, one was watching a movie, and I literally knocked out about 80 thank you notes. I worked and then I put them all in my CRM. And I worked for the whole 6-hour flight from Vegas, and we landed, and they looked at me and they said, "Oh, now we know." We know.
I love airplane time, because I get solidarity. I get to read. I get to do things like thank you notes that are often pushed to the back burner in the office. And so you got to maximize your time. It's funny. I posted something on LinkedIn like a year or two ago that got a lot of traction, and if you look through, the people that are flying in first class are working.
Oh, for sure.
And the people that are sitting in the back of the plane are playing games on their phone.
Right.
So,
Right. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed listening to Aaron and his feedback on my book, The Retail Leasing Playbook. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Please subscribe and tell others. And Aaron, thank you so much for being my guest today.
I'm humbled to be on. Thank you. If you haven't bought the book yet, what are you doing? Buy it. I would highly recommend it. And for those of you who, for some reason, have been under a rock and haven't been able to connect with Beth on LinkedIn or follow her on social media, I'd highly recommend doing it. She's got the best fundamentals, and I can tell you, as a direct result of my career, I made a lot of money in leasing just by practicing what she was preaching. And sometimes the advice that you give is like, it's like, oh, aha, like that's not overly complicated, but you have to go out and do the work associated with it. And I'm just so thankful that someone like yourself is out there preaching that message. And I would highly encourage all of you to follow Beth and do whatever you can. She's super approachable, and reach out
Thank you.
And just keep crushing it.
Thanks, Aaron. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.